Welcome to the Fantasy Labrats. This is week 9 of the NFL. We are now past the half point of the season, and it was kind of a rough patch for the season. So we have injuries, but before that, I'm going to introduce my co-casters, Nani and Avamits, and we will be analyzing each of the 1 p.m. and Thursday night games. The Thursday game and the Sunday 1 p.m. games. And we'll go through each game and talk about cash plays, tourney plays, and fades. And yeah, before we do that, week 8 was it was full of carts, just players on carts on every game. There were people who were running past the outside bounds and then running on the concrete and then getting their MCLs injured.
That was gross.
Was that the Reggie Bush one?
That was the Reggie Bush one. I don't know why they have concrete. It seems to be a common layout for all the fields.
Yeah, there's a lot of problems. There's another problem at the back of the end zone. They always have a bunch of cameramen sitting there, but you always run into the back of the end zone, so you're inherently just going to run into those guys and get hurt on their cameras.
Yeah, but concrete on cleats, scary stuff. But we have a lot of notable injuries, so we're going to quickly go through these. Le'Veon Bell's out for the season. Keenan Allen's out for the season. Steve Smith Sr., who was declared that this season would be his last season, is out for the season.
Sad.
Matt Forte was injured, and then we had Ricardo Lockett, who took a huge hit in the middle of the field on a punt return, like nowhere near the ball, got decked, and then fell to the ground. And then I think there was some drama with people saying that Des Bryant was taunting him on the ground.
He was.
And then yeah,
Who knows?
On video, it looked like he was, and then he came out on Twitter, obviously saying that this is BS. He would never do that, kind of.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of drama there. I think Russell Wilson came out and said he's one of the good guys or something like that. So there's some NFL drama if you want to look into that.
No thanks.
Nah.
Yeah, but a lot of injuries for very relevant players, so it's sad to see. So I have a fun statistic. So I organize running backs by their fantasy points on Fanduel per game. And in the top 5 list, there are 3 people on the during the top 5 that have been injured, and they're out for the season. So it's Jamal Charles, who's out, 2nd on the list, Le'Veon Bell, who's out, 4th on the list, and Arian Foster, who's 5th on the list. So it makes me kind of worry about Devontae Freeman, who's 1st, Todd Gurley, who's 3rd, because it seems to be a trend.
Yeah, that's the problem with these feature backs, is that we trust them. They get all the workload, but if you get all the workload, you also become more
Higher
exposed. Yeah, you become more exposed to getting hurt. So that's just the territory.
Mm-hmm. Just the fun fact, though, you can't fade these people or release them just because you're scared that they're gonna.
But it does mean you should handcuff them in a season long.
Exactly. So that you should do. All right. Anything else you guys want to add about injuries before we get right into the games?
Just that I hope that Nani in our season long is prepared to face D'Angelo Williams, who I wavered this week.
Wow.
The hot pickup, the hot waiver.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right, so we'll get right to it. We have the Thursday game. We have Cleveland at Cincinnati. The spread is Cincinnati minus 11. They're still undefeated. And the over-under is 45.5. So Nani, what do you think about the Cleveland Browns in this situation?
All right, so you forgot to mention another notable injury, and it's to Josh McCown, who is not playing this Thursday. Yeah, so he's the quarterback of the Browns. He's not playing this Thursday, and instead we get Johnny Manziel. Are you guys willing to cash out on Johnny Manziel? You guys gonna play some Johnny Manziel?
Hey, his name's Johnny Cash. He should be in all your cash lineups.
Money.
No. I'm not having any part in this. I think as Cleveland, as a team as a whole, because without McCown, they're going to take a hit. I am scared to even play him for any players in cash and tourney at this point. Even when it comes to Barnage, I really want no part in Barnage as well. Barnage, I feel like his value is tied to McCown. When McCown sort of took over, that's when he had that burst. Like he just got a ton of targets, got a lot of red zone looks, and I think with Johnny back, he's gonna struggle.
Was it McCown that triggered that, or playing against the Raiders that triggered that?
A little bit of both. A little bit of
Because
both.
he had 6 good games straight, and I think
Yeah, I'm not saying that he's gonna all of a sudden come out and give zero, but I do think that the days of Barnage being the maximum Barnage and you're gonna get like this top three tight end every week, I think that goes away. And especially this week, I am willing to fade him and not play him. He's also priced a lot more now as well, so I don't think he's worth that price
Yeah,
tag.
Barnage is the second highest tight end.
Yeah,
What kind of
that's-
crap is that?
No thanks.
he's tight end number 2 at the moment too.
Yeah, so I think it's too much of a cost, especially with the changing quarterback. It's a gamble, and I'm not willing to take that gamble. A lot of people are also saying, oh, if McCown's gone and Johnny's back, then Benjamin's gonna have that awesome, early season success he had. I don't think so. I think Travis Benjamin hasn't scored since week 3. He has lesser targets, and he's only had 4 red zone targets all year. So you're just hoping for that big bomber from Johnny that he threw to him in the first 2 games. And I'm not willing to gamble like that, especially his price tag. I'm staying away from Travis Benjamin as well.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that until we see, 1, what they're going to do, and 2, if they keep Johnny Manziel as the starting quarterback, you can't play anybody until we know.
Yeah, we need to
if
see.
anybody does. Because this is a stat that kept coming up on my Twitter feed, but Duke Johnson has been receiving somewhere in the range of 8 to 10 targets every single game with McCown. And when Manziel has played, Duke Johnson cumulatively has received 0 targets. And that's just probably not going to happen going forward. They probably will game plan more for those type of guys. Barnage has since come out of the woodwork since Johnny Manziel took to the bench again. So I think we need to see what they're going to do with Johnny Manziel first before we start punching into these guys into our lineups.
Yeah, especially with the spread being plus 11, that's a telling sign that they're going to struggle. At least Vegas has them struggling, and Vegas knows their stuff, and I'm going to side with Vegas and just stay away from the Cleveland offense.
All
Yeah.
right. How about Oven Mitch? Do you have any thoughts on the Bengals players?
Yeah, so I think up until now, a lot of people were riding the hype train that was Andy Dalton. He was priced really cheaply. On some sites, he was one of the min players, like insanely low for the fact that he was in the top 2 of quarterback production. I think his price has actually gone up. He's now at 8,200, which I think is fitting. But he still comes with that risk of old Andy coming out. And, I've been off of him every week. And then this last week, when I finally committed to playing the guy, he took a stinker against the Steelers defense, which has sometimes shown up and sometimes not. But I thought for sure in this game, which was, predicted by a lot of people to be a shootout, it was a really upsetting sort of outcome. And I think the divisional matchups between the Bengals and their divisional opponents is typically pretty low scoring, even though the game scripts might suggest they should be higher scoring. So for me, for cash, I'm staying away from the Bengals just because I'm scared. It might be recency bias that I'm scared of Andy Dalton, but old Andy still does exist somewhere in there. So I'm not touching Andy Dalton. But I do think an attorney, he has some viability because he does have all the weapons. This is a vulnerable defense, and they are minus 11, which assumes that they're going to have a big lead. They have to get the big lead somehow. Maybe they do that through the air. In the last 4 games against the Browns, however, Andy Dalton has only had 3 TDs and 7 interceptions. So he's throwing a lot of picks. The reason that I still think he's kind of a play is because Joe Hayden's out, and compared to other years, his offensive line is better. They're giving him a lot of time back there, and he's actually able to make plays as opposed to getting sacked or making bad plays. So I do still think he's in the mix to be considered for a tourney, but not for a cash. And the same thing goes for A.J. Green. In the last 4 games versus the Browns, in total, he has 130 yards. That's over 4 games, only 130 yards, not 1 game. So he doesn't perform well against the Browns, but like I said, Joe Hayden's out, and usually that's the matchup you get is A.J. Green and Joe Hayden. So, if you're feeling risky, he could be a suitable tournament play.
Let's go.
Where I think is a good area to sort of attack is the run game. And like I said, I like home favorites. I like the running back, right? So they're minus 11. They're at home. Everybody's been sort of scared of is it going to be Giovanni Bernard or is it going to be Jeremy Hill? I feel like this last week when we saw Jeremy Hill get 16 touches and Gio get 3 touches, that they've sort of committed to Jeremy Hill. And in previous games versus the Browns, Jeremy Hill has gone off. In the last game, he had 25 carries for 148 yards and 2 touchdowns. So I think that he's a good tourney play. Again, not a cash play because you're scared of Giovanni, but I do really think that this is a game for Jeremy Hill.
I love it when Roto posts about, like, they said on the Roto before last week's game that they're going to feature Jeremy Hill and commit to him, right?
Mhm.
Love it when it's correct.
Yeah, when they actually stick to
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. I have a question for you, Evan Mintz.
Sure.
How do you feel about the defense of Cincinnati since they're minus 11?
I like the defense of Cincinnati, and it's partly because I feel like they can get after the quarterback really well and get you those sack values. But Manziel is a risk taker, which is why we see him throwing bombers to Travis Benjamin. But at the same time, he's also throwing those bombers to Cincinnati cornerbacks. So I think there's some high upside here with the Cincinnati defense that they could give you some pick sixes just because we know how Johnny Manziel is. He's a fumbling and a pick machine.
Yep. So is he a cash play or the defense?
The defense?
Yeah.
The defense is probably a cash play just because it's so safe. I really don't see the Browns doing much. And I had mentioned this stat to you earlier. The last time that Johnny Manziel started, his first start was actually against the Bengals, and the final score of that game was 30-0 in the Bengals' favor. Manziel wasn't able to do anything. So I think it's a safe cash play.
Cool.
Agreed. All right, so I really like the Jeremy Hill call. I'm on that boat. Just to add. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the Sunday games. So that was a primetime game. Now we're going to go to the Sunday games. And we're going to start off by talking about Jacksonville at New York Jets. And the spread is off at the moment, but I imagine that the Jets are going to have minus points, maybe -3 in that area.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. So what do we feel about the Jaguar players, Nani?
Jacksonville, in terms of cash, because the Jets are a good defense. I know we saw them get blown up by the Raiders.
Blown up.
They did. I mean, it also helped that Ryan Fitzpatrick left the game, and so they were sort of taking over that opportunity.
Yeah, I think that was one of those things where like the quarterback leaves, they see old Geno, and then the defense sort of was like, well, good game, guys, and then they just gave up.
So I feel like this is sort of their comeback. They sort of bounce back, have a good game, defensive game, and Jacksonville will struggle. And I think we won't see Bortles thriving like Derek Carr did. To me, there's not a lot of safe plays, so I don't really have anyone as a cash play for Jacksonville. As a tourney play, I have Allen Hurns priced at 6,800. That's because he has 1 touchdown in each of the last 5 games. And the Jets have allowed 8 touchdowns all year to wide receivers, and only 2 of them have gone to WR1s. So when they do give touchdowns, it's only to the second receiver or so on. And I think Allen Hurns will continue that trend and try to get a touchdown and give you some upside. In terms of fading, just from the last statistics that I just said, I don't like Allen Robinson. He will be on Revis Island, so he's not a safe play just because he will be covered by Revis. And then also Yeldon. They are going against the Jets ranked number 1. They're still ranked number 1 running back defense. So I will stay away from Yeldon as well.
What do you feel about Bortles?
Bortles, like I said, I don't think he will do great. I'm not strong to say he's a fade, but I don't think he will do particularly well against the Jets defense. I think they'll get their turnovers and they'll be like a good defense again. So
you think it was sort of a fluke that the Jets gave up so much to the Raiders?
Yeah, I think so. And it's also to Derek Carr's credit. I think Derek Carr is like he's getting pretty good. So
yeah, I faded him the last 3 weeks, and both of our podcasts I've been off of the Raiders, and the Raiders have burned me twice now.
So I agree with your analysis that Allen Hurns will probably do better than Allen Robinson, but I don't think that Hurns has enough upside in this particular game. Like his ceiling is low in this particular game. Robinson's on Revis Island, but Hurns is on Cromartie Island. And while Cromartie is less of a defensive force than Levis, I think he's still pretty good. And if he gives Allen Hurns a touchdown, it might be 1, and I think he's going to limit. So I don't see enough upside for a tourney play either. So I might even fade Allen Hurns. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I heard somebody say the other day that Revis doesn't actually shadow anybody, and that he just plays wherever they put him on the field. So Allen Robinson, we can say he's on Revis Island because it's the WR1 versus the cornerback one. But in reality, most likely, these guys see an even share of Revis and an even share of Cromartie. So which in my mind makes them both probably not plays.
Yeah.
It is the Jacksonville offense. I mean, how much upside is there really? You also didn't mention Julius Thomas. Is there any love for Julius Thomas?
I'm not really too sure about where I fall with Julius Thomas right now. He's sort of been injured. He's dealing with several injuries. He had a groin injury, hip injury, and some other injury. It's a little bit too hard for me to really call.
So you're just going to be on the wait and see approach.
Yeah, I'm not too high or not too low on him. I think with the injuries, I mean he's coming off a bye, so that's a plus for him. But I want to wait and see on that.
All right. Let's move on to the Jets players. I think that's a little more exciting. So what do you think about these Jets players?
Yeah, I think you're right. They're a little bit more exciting, but it definitely depends on who's throwing them the ball. If it's Geno Smith, I know he had a nice game when he replaced. He had a good fantasy game. He didn't really do much for the receivers.
No.
Just to bring this up, last time I mentioned that you might want to play Jeff Cumberland against the Oakland Raiders. I seriously hope you did not do that. He only had 3 targets in that game. But anyway, like I was saying, I think it depends heavily on who the quarterback is that's playing. And even so, I'm not 100% sure that you're wanting the passing weapons, because if we do get Geno Smith, you're having Geno Smith, and we haven't really seen a long-standing period of time where Geno Smith has been a successful NFL quarterback. And then on the other hand, you have Ryan Fitzpatrick, who's been good, but he's got an injured non-throwing hand. So it's a hand that he's holding the ball with for stability. I think what they end up doing here is converting to a very run-heavy game, which I think benefits Chris Ivory, which to me makes him a cash play. And he's at a price that I think is just right for a feature back. There's not very many feature backs in his price range that you can get and be certain that they're going to be the guy. Powell isn't really stealing carries. Zach Stacy isn't stealing many carries. And since Stephen Ridley's came back, he hasn't had a single snap. So I think there's a lot of upside there. The Jags are the 26th ranked defense against fantasy running backs. So I think that Chris Ivory is a good way to go. I'm not playing either of the quarterbacks. And I think for tourneys and you're looking at Eric Decker and Brandon Marshall, there's just too much question about what will happen with them that I'm probably not playing them. And I'm not telling you not to play them. For me, I'm not playing either guy.
Do you know the injury status of Brandon Marshall?
Brandon Marshall. He's just foot hurt, but he's going to play, I think. It says likely to play.
Oh, yeah, he's the same thing goes for Eric Decker. He's questionable. He missed practice today, but the likelihood is that he's going to play. The only thing is he's not going to have practice. But as we've seen, he's going to get you 60 yards and a touchdown regardless.
Basically, the passing offense is like slightly injured in some way or form. Yeah. So I agree with you. I'll probably just fade him.
I think if you just play Ivory, you're good. Sorry, I have to close my door here.
Anything to add here, Nani, before we move on?
Nope.
All right, so let's move on. All right, so the next game is the St. Louis Rams at Minnesota. The spread is -2.5 Minnesota, and the over/under is low. It is 40. So with that, what do we think about the Rams players?
In terms of Rams players, last week I talked about how I really, really liked Todd Gurley. I had him as a cash play, as an attorney play, and I was really high on him, and I spent like maybe 5 minutes talking about how much I love Todd Gurley. He ended up being the #1 running back last week, and if you didn't have him, you pretty much got burned pretty good.
Whoa, do you guys hear that? Is that non-tooting his own horn? That's what I'm hearing.
It is. But
you called Todd Gurley.
No,
tone it down a little bit.
But look, like we were talking about, is it worth playing him or not? And last week it actually was worth it. He was about 50% owned in the Fanduel tournaments.
Yeah.
And he was the #1 running back, and the second one behind him was probably like 6-8 points away.
Shane Vereen.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was Shane Vereen. Well,
which was a weird one. So. Yeah. I mean, last week there was a lot of injuries and a lot of running backs got injured, and we didn't have a lot of good running back performances. So Todd Gurley, if you had him, really helped you win a lot of tourneys. So I will play it safe and say, Todd Gurley is a good cash play this week. He's getting over 20 touches a game, so he's being very efficient, and he's also finding the end zone. However, he is against the 5th-ranked rushing defense in Minnesota. That sort of worries me a little bit. I mean, I know he's doing really good, and they're really hyping him up, and he's a rookie. I think he's okay as a cash play, but I'm actually not too ecstatic about playing him in tourney play, especially at his price tag being $9,000, and that he is going to be much, much, much more chalk than he was last week. at 50%. It's gonna be maybe 90% this week. I don't know. I don't want that.
I don't know about that.
So I mean, I think that's sort of where I stand with Todd Gurley. I'll have him in cash, but not tourney. Rams defense every week is a good cash play. They're pretty safe. They're averaging about double digits in fantasy points for defense, which is pretty good. So it's hard to really see Minnesota destroying them enough to make them lose points or get minimal points. For a tourney play, Tavon Austin is always there, especially if his price is going to stay around 5,700. He's a very boom or bust option, however. I mean, his floor is, he can get you 2-3 points. But as you saw last week, he was able to get 20 points if he just got a bunch of, rushing touchdown and a catching touchdown. And he actually got 100 yards through the air, or 98, right? Which is pretty impressive. They're getting him more and more involved. And that could be a product of just Todd Gurley just receiving a lot of attention. So he's also a good tourney play, especially his price, and I like him.
Tavon Austin, if the Rams are at the less than 30-yard line and it's second down or something, he will always do that movement play where he crosses the field and they snap the
reverse,
ball and then pretend to give it to Gurley and then give it back to Austin and he'll run it in. So unless you have that, I feel like he's a bust.
I mean,
so
for his averages for the year, he's getting about 6 targets per game and about 3 rushing attempts per game. That's what you expect from him.
It's not bad.
But because he's so fast and very explosive, he can find the end zone with that. But
I like him as a player.
Yeah, that's what you're gonna get from that guy. You're gonna get those 9 tries, 6 through the air, 3 through the ground, and you just hope that he finds space and he gets it into the end zone.
He's a gadget player. He's just
he is.
The play has to be for him.
Yeah, he's one of those tourney players that can really win you a tourney or just put you in the back end. So again, he'll be listed as a tourney play for me. And then
Can I just say before you go on that if you follow us on Twitter, you would have gotten us tweeting out the day of that Tavon Austin was a really good play. We also tweeted Hillman and Jacob Tammy, who were really good plays. All right, go on.
Yep. And then fade is the very obvious. Yeah. For the Rams wise, the fade wise, it's everyone else. You don't play Foles, you don't play any of the receivers, and I think that continues this week. You don't play with fire. Jared Cook, stay out.
Yeah. The over-under in this game scares me off of pretty much everyone too, except for the Gurley.
Running back and defense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Low games, you want the running back and defense.
Yes.
Does it scare you guys at all that the Vikings are favored? What the heck's that about?
-2.5 is yeah.
They're 5-2.
Yeah.
That's true.
5-2.
Yeah. So what do you think about the Minnesota players? Do you also fade them just because of the over/under?
Yeah, so like I was saying, I think in games like this, you usually want the running backs and defenses. And last week I was off AP, and for good reason. He did get a good amount of yards, but other than that, he didn't do much. Not worth the price tag for sure. And I think that until we see him, it's sort of like show me you're good. And then mix that with the fact that he's playing against a really good defense. It doesn't make for a good combination there. And also with Stephon Diggs, I don't know. I feel like I'm the only guy who's still a non-believer in Stephon Diggs. He is their wide. I'm still a non-believer, and it probably has nothing to do with this. If you put him on a team with a better quarterback, I'm all in. Give me some Stephon Diggs, but he's Teddy Bridgewater still, and I think it's these miracle plays because until he got that last-minute touchdown, his value was not very much to me, and a lot of people got saved because of that. And against this defense, I don't see that happening. So I'm off of Stephon Diggs as well. And the rest of the offense, obviously.
Yep. I'm with you. I like him as a player, just not this game, not this matchup.
I got a question for you guys.
Let's hear it.
What do you think his ownership was last week, according to the Thursday games? Because that's all we have. Unless I think it's
33.
20.
He was 30% owned, and he was the chalk play. He was the highest owned receiver that week.
And he did well too, right?
And they got saved. He had 14. I think 14.
No, I think he ended with 20.
20.
Yeah. So he did get saved by that touchdown. It was a nice touchdown, though. You gotta give him credit. It was a nice touchdown. He was spinning and spinning once he got hit. I liked it.
I like him as a player.
I like Charles Johnson better.
Hey, Charles Johnson got him the game winner. So.
That's true.
All right, let's move on. Okay, so the next game we have Oakland at Pittsburgh. I really like this game. The spread is -4 Pittsburgh. The over/under is 48. I think it's an interesting game from a football standpoint instead of a DFS, whatever. Big Ben is this is his second game coming off of his injury. He looked a little bobbled, and Oakland is on a hot streak. Derek Carr's been lining it up. I think this is going to be a great game to watch. So let's start with the Pittsburgh players. So who do we like here, Avamits?
Yeah, so I think this game is a bit of a letdown spot for the Oakland Raiders, and I think that
Wow.
I know, but they're coming off a big win.
Talking
They're-
about the Steelers player right now, okay?
I know. I'm just giving you a little bit of game script before I give you the. I think the Pittsburgh wins the game. Obviously, Vegas thinks so too, but I think they cover the spread. Oakland has to travel across country here. They're coming off a pretty big win against the Jets that not very many people were on them for. And then you have the Pittsburgh Steelers who lost an emotional divisional game, but they're at home. And I think that this is sort of that spot where everybody thinks, let's take the Raiders, and then Pittsburgh completely dominates, and we see the Raiders for what they've been for the last 5 to 10 to 20 years, which is just an average team to below average, which means that I obviously like Pittsburgh players, and even if they were going to lose the game, I was going to like Pittsburgh players. The Raiders' defense is a little bit leaky, particularly in the secondary, so I think Antonio Brown is a good play, considering that his price tag is still not where it should be if Big Ben is the quarterback. Last week he only got 47 yards and a touchdown. I think that comes up. I think Big Ben, as he gets more healthy, we'll see Antonio Brown's stats increase. I still think he's a cash play, high floor,
It
particularly in
seems
PPR.
like he had that stat in the first drive, doesn't it?
Yeah, the rest, Big Ben didn't look right in that game. Like he just
Yeah.
didn't look right, and he threw 3 picks. And to be fair, it was the Bengals defense, which is known for applying pressure and causing these mistakes. The Raiders defense is not that way, unless
No.
Geno Smith's the quarterback. Even Geno Smith sort of lit them up. So if Geno Smith can do it,
Jeez.
I think that Big Ben, a little bit injured, can probably do it. Another guy that I mentioned earlier in the cast was D'Angelo Williams. When Le'Veon was suspended for the first 2 games for being caught with marijuana, D'Angelo actually got 22 touches and 24 touches, respectively, in the first 2 games. He returned 14 points and 30 points on those games. And when Bell went out in the last game, he had 9 touches for 71 yards. So he is a high upside play, and I feel like he has a high floor. And his touches are guaranteed because they always, in that offense, use the running back and Antonio Brown, usually. So I think that D'Angelo Williams is a good cash play, and at 6,500, I think you're getting a value here. For Tourney, I think every week, depending on the price, Martavis Bryant is probably a tourney play, just because of the percentage of times that he turns his catches into touchdowns. So, he went down about $300 from last week. So I think that last week I was off of him because he was too high. I think 6,900 is probably the right price. And again, as Big Ben gets more healthy, I become more confident in this play. But until we get full health and we see him chucking it deep, I think Martavis is just going to be a tournament play.
Yep.
The tight end logic sort of still stands here. We saw them go off earlier. Jeff Cumberland didn't have the coming out party that I was hoping for last week with the Jets, but he's Jeff Cumberland.
But
I
it's
don't
the Jets.
And I'm going to blame it. I'm not going to blame it on poor Jeffy. I'm going to blame it on Geno Smith because it's easier to do that. If Ryan Fitzpatrick was in the game, Jeff Cumberland would have got those touches. Come on, baby. You can't tell me that's not the case. We didn't see what happened when Fitz was in the game. He was out right away.
The lineman until you brought him up. Let's just say that.
I can't argue with you. So another guy that I like then obviously is the tight end for Pittsburgh, Heath Miller. Last week he actually led the team. He had 10 receptions for 105 yards. Did you guys know that? He was the primary target for Big Ben, and I think versus Oakland they can keep that going and possibly turn it into a touchdown. But even if they don't, 10 for 105 is pretty good for a tight end in Fanduel.
Against the Bengals, too. Not bad.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to the Oakland players. Hot Oakland. Their offense is very efficient. So do we play the Carr, Crabtree, Amari Cooper?
I'll mention one thing too. In terms of Amit's analysis, I agree with most of it. The only one I don't like really is D'Angelo Williams. I don't like him just because I know the Raiders. They're a pretty bad defense, but on the ground they're actually pretty decent. They're ranked second against the run, and they've only allowed 3 touchdowns all year. So they're sort of backing that up. And I think the way you beat the Raiders is through the air. And I think with Big Ben as your main quarterback, you're going to look through the air to try to score. So I don't really like D'Angelo Williams.
Yeah, I'm not
sort of
going to
stay
argue
away.
with you. I saw the same. I saw the same stat you saw, and it actually goes for wide receivers too. Wide receivers don't score on the Oakland. They have 3 touchdowns as well on the year. It's tight ends. It's only tight ends, which makes Heath Miller a strong play.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll just throw that out. Okay, so onto the Raiders. When I made this analysis, I try to keep it like without so much of the recent bias that we saw. Like they went ham last week. They went against the Jets, which we were like, oh, stay away. It's the Jets. They're so good. And so I don't know. I'll try to do the analysis, and you guys let me know if I'm going too high on them, and try to bring it back down a little bit. All right?
I got you. I got you.
In terms of cash play, I really like Michael Crabtree. He's only priced at 5,800. To me, is a really good value play. He's getting more targets than Cooper, and in terms of the red zone, he's seen 7 red zone targets, whereas Cooper has only seen 1 red zone target. So off of opportunity and getting the volume, 5,800 is a pretty good price point for Michael Crabtree. Also, for another cash play I have is Derek Carr. His lowest score of the season was against Denver with 12 points. He usually averages above 20. The only other low score he had was against Chicago with 14. So I feel like that's like a decent floor, unless you're assuming that the Pittsburgh will be as good as Denver and really limit this guy. I see him as he's gonna have a decent floor, and he has multi-touchdown upside. As we've seen in last game, he's thrown for 4 touchdowns, and that's not his first game of throwing 4 touchdowns. He's actually thrown for 4 touchdowns one other time this season, and he's also thrown for 2 games where he had 3 touchdowns. And then so he's a pretty high performing quarterback, and I think he's a decent cash play. For tourney play, I have Amari Cooper. So one of the interesting stats I saw was that Derek Carr leads the NFL with 9 touchdown passes outside of the red zone, and 3 of them are to Cooper. He's throwing deep, a lot of deep balls, and a lot of them are to Cooper, and he's making plays, like big plays. So with that kind of ability, you can't rule him out as a tourney play. He's gonna get you those popcorn stats. Like if he breaks a big one, you're gonna make money. But it's a really boomer bust though, because he's seeing. It's sort of funny. I was looking at the stats, and he's either getting 47 yards or 130 yards, and then give or take a touchdown. Like that's what you're looking at. Like really, that's what you're looking at. 47, 130 and a touchdown or so. So I think Amari Cooper's a good tourney play, and that's all I have.
Okay, so just a quick question then. You haven't mentioned Latavius Murray, and is that because of some game script that you're thinking of? Like, what do you think is going to happen in this game to make you not play Latavius Murray?
Latavius Murray, I feel like I agree with you with the game script. I think this is a letdown spot. And Murray, he's getting the volume, but he's against Pittsburgh defense, and I think I had Pittsburgh defense as a pretty good rushing defense. And so that was enough for me to just sort of stay away. Like to me, so far this year, Latavius Murray has performed how you would expect him to. Besides the Jets game last week, I thought he was gonna have a crap of a game. But like when given the volume and against the team, if they're a good rushing defense, he'll usually do bad. But if it's a weak defense, he'll get used and get a touchdown or so. And I feel like this is a spot where he'll get stopped a little bit from Pittsburgh and have a hard time. So I sort of had it as a fade. But I didn't want to because he has the volume. Don't get me wrong. He gets 20 touches a game, and more than there's a good enough reason he could find the end zone. So I didn't feel too strong either to fade him or to endorse him as a tourney play.
Yeah, I just have one quick question, and it's because you own him in a season long. Would you consider him a feature back for that team, or do you think that the other 2 fullbacks and running backs sort of suck too much from him to make him not really a feature back?
I think he's a feature back.
You think he's a feature back?
I mean,
okay, so you're not playing a feature back. That's like rare to say that.
He's getting 20. He's getting 20 touches. So that to me is like a feature back as features you can get. So
he's not a red zone back.
Yeah, maybe it's a little bit of
that
feel.
Could be true.
Maybe it's a little bit of feel. I just don't feel like he'll do particularly well this game.
Yeah, it's probably. I mean, if you're saying the game script is that Pittsburgh dominates and that they're behind, a feature back will be in the game to play those snaps. So I'm just curious if the if he's a feature or not actually matters. But
yeah,
the Raiders are the road dogs, so it's hard to. All right, so let's keep this rolling. So next we have Green Bay at Carolina. The once undefeated Green Bay against the still undefeated Carolina.
Technically, wasn't every team in the league once undefeated?
Technically, before they played a game, yes.
Yeah. Let's just start every single one with once undefeated Jacksonville versus the once undefeated Jets. No, you don't like that?
No.
All right.
All right. So the spread is Carolina plus 2.5 at home, and the over/under is 46.5, which is reasonable. Green Bay is coming off a bad game, so their first loss against a very strong defense, Broncos, and Carolina is a good defensive team. So that's what we think. So let's go into the analysis here. Who do we like in terms of the players on Green Bay?
So this is another difficult game for me. Again, it could be recency bias, but I had a very hard time really endorsing anyone as a cash play for Green Bay. It's especially after the last game. Like I feel like Green Bay is a good offensive team, but we really haven't seen it. Like they're having trouble scoring, and they've only scored well against bad teams, like negative record teams. Against teams with high records, they have a really hard time scoring. And I think a lot of that, the root of that problem is that they can't stretch the field anymore. Last year they had Jordy Nelson, and he had a ton of big yardage plays. And I feel like this year, a lot of their problems are because they can't stretch the field. They don't, you never see Aaron Rodgers take deep shots anymore. It's always these little small routes. The farthest they go is to James Jones, and he'll like find the end zone somehow. But I feel like for the most part, like they're not doing those deep shots, those penalty flags, deep shots, touchdowns. And I think because of that, the defense is playing tighter, and they're not allowing the running game to do well. And so I'm a little low on Green Bay to the point where I don't really have anyone as a cash play. I don't feel safe playing any Green Bay players right now. They just came off a bad beat against Denver. Now they're going up against Carolina, who's another respectable defense. So it's really hard to have a bounce back and like really do well. So I don't really have anyone as a cash play because I don't feel safe about it. Tourney play, I didn't really have anyone either. The only player I have written down for tourney play is Randall Cobb. The only thing I have about that is that he plays a slot, so I'm hoping that he avoids Josh Norman. Since his explosion against Kansas City, he's been terrible. He's been getting 2 points, 3 points, 4 points a game.
Which is since his injury.
Yeah, since his injury. So, and if anything, this would be his comeback game. I mean, in 2014 against Carolina, this is where he had 6 catches for 121 yards and a touchdown. So, like, if he can do that before, I mean, Carolina defense is improved, yes, but if he can do it, maybe he can repeat that performance and give a good showing for tourney play. But other than that, I don't feel safe playing anyone else. I'm not too high on anyone else. In terms of fading, again, I don't like the Green Bay running back situation. I know Eddie Lacy got a touchdown last game, but his count from him to Starks wasn't a big difference, right? Like he got like 12 carries, and Starks had like 4 or 5. Like that's not enough for me to feel safe that he is the feature back once again to get all the bulk of the carries and be able to really get you a lot of points to get his worth. So I'm sort of fading Eddie Lacy and James Starks for this week.
Yeah, I think just to sort of piggyback onto your Green Bay running back situation, I think that split has always been there between James Starks and Eddie Lacy. Of recently, it has picked up, but 12-5 seems pretty normal to me. What I'm scared of is 2 other things. Is one, that Eddie Lacy doesn't look like the Eddie Lacy from the last 2 years, and 2, the matchup is just horrendous. So, you're probably not even looking at him in DFS even for the cheapened price that he has now come to. I think they actually don't really have any good matches coming up. I've looked at it, but if they did have good matchups, I would still consider playing Eddie Lacy at the price. I don't really care about the split anymore.
He's 6,600. It was so hard for me to put him as a fade. It was 6,600.
Yeah, he's almost to the point where he's a play even in a bad matchup. But, there's a lot of factors that go into whether or not you play him, and just this week's just not a good situation.
Not a good week.
I'd like to take the opposing view on not the running back. I agree with the running back, but the wide receiver. I feel like because Green Bay has been struggling, especially in the recency, they struggled against the Broncos. And Carolina's, in the public eye, a really good defense, and they are. They're not bad. They have Josh Norman as the cornerback, and it's pretty good. But I still think there's opportunity because of these views in the tournament play for a wide receiver on Green Bay. So I would look to play someone that's not if they decide to shadow, if they decide to have Josh Norman shadow someone, I'd avoid that wide receiver and go with the opposing for attorney play and hope for the upside because it's still Aaron Rodgers. They have a good O-line, and I think they can pull off a good game for a wide receiver. So I'm looking at James Jones,
Devontae Adams.
Devontae Adams. So
We haven't seen anything from Devontae Adams though. It's
Yeah.
so hard to
it is.
pay.
Didn't he get 5 catches in the last game?
No, he had 1 for 12, I think.
Maybe it was 5 targets. Look, I know there was something 5 involving him.
Yeah.
My take on the wide receiver situation is that yes, you avoid whoever the hell Josh Norman's guarding. Most likely, it's James Jones because he's the wide receiver 2 technically right now. Like you said, in the slot you have Cobb, but the guy that guards the slot is the same guy who guarded Jordan Matthews, who was held to nothing.
But Jordan Matthews has been dealing with a hand injury that he's been dropping a lot more balls than catching.
If you watch the game, though, it wasn't that he was dropping balls. He was just not getting open. So I think their slot corner is really good as well. Their second cornerback, who is not guarding the slot, is Charles Tillman, who used to be a cornerback on the Bears. And he is quite old, and he was more known for causing fumbles than defending passes. So whoever Charles Tillman's on is the wide receiver that I would consider. Now, I'm not considering any of them, but because I'm just off of Green Bay as an away team in general. But if you are attacking it, it's whoever Charles Tillman is guarding, which this week is probably Devontae Adams, but Devontae Adams, as we've seen, gets injured pretty easily. So it's a tough call. I think you just stay away altogether.
So if you guys had to choose one, who would you guys choose? You guys know my choice.
I'm probably gambling on Devontae Adams. And it's a gamble.
I was thinking too. I'll pick the wide receiver that is the least prestigious in the public eye, and to the team. So Devontae Adams.
But again, it's a gamble. I feel like it's a gamble
for the upside. On the flip side, I don't think so. The Carolina, their offense is, I think they're a low key offense, but fairly efficient somehow. So they do have Cam Newton. So let's hear your analysis on this.
Yeah, so I've been sort of the mind that I don't like Jonathan Stewart forever. Just as Nani was of the mind that he didn't like Chris Johnson. I convinced him via watching Chris Johnson play that Chris Johnson was actually a good running back this year. And he has convinced me that Jonathan Stewart is actually a good running back. And I think both of these are with price in consideration.
Yeah.
The low price makes them more desirable than they otherwise would be. Jonathan Stewart, because he played on Monday, he had a good game, and because he played on Monday, his price didn't go up from Sunday, or from last week's prices. So he's still 6,600, and in the last 3 games, these are his stats. 24 carries for 82 yards and a touchdown, 24 carries for 125 yards, and 20 carries for 78 yards and 2 touchdowns. And 2 of those games, the 2 second bigger games, were against Seattle and Philadelphia, 2 pretty good rushing defenses. This week they're going up against Green Bay, who got gashed by C.J. Anderson and Ronnie Hillman, who have done nothing all year. I think the fact that you have Jonathan Stewart sort of coming on this upswing in the best rushing offense in the league right now versus what seems to be a declining Green Bay defense, I think makes Jonathan Stewart like a definite cash play, particularly at his cheapened price. Like he's going to be in most of my lineups this week. The second guy that I'm looking at in cash is Greg Olsen. If you're watching that game at all, towards the end, they were pretty much only targeting Greg Olsen when they were trying to keep ahead of the Colts, and he also got a touchdown. Green Bay has, over the last 2 games, given up 100-plus yards to both of the tight ends that we're facing, and that, in the last game, was against Denver, who has Owen Daniels and Virgil Green, who have been irrelevant all year. So it's like, I honestly feel like Green Bay revitalized the entire Denver offense. Like, they didn't have Ronnie Hillman and C.J. Anderson. Play Green Bay, those guys are relevant. And then they didn't have Owen Daniels and Virgil Green all year. Play Green Bay, now those guys are relevant. So I feel like this is a good spot for Greg Olsen and Jonathan Stewart to sort of have a heyday, and that's why I like them in cash. Mm-hmm. For the last few weeks, I've been saying that I like Cam Newton in cash, and I'm sort of wavering on that a little bit because of the fact that I'm depending on a high floor through rushing touchdowns. And it seems like, Jonathan Stewart got a rushing touchdown this last week. The week before that, Tolbert had 2. And the week before that, Jonathan Stewart had 2. So those goal line looks they keep getting are not as often going to Cam. So I think if you are rolling him out, you're rolling him out hoping for a large rushing upside and not necessarily in tournaments. His price is at 7,900. It actually went down a little bit. But I think there are better quarterbacks in his price range that give you a safer floor for cash. So he's specifically a tournament play. And I think that the Carolina defense as well, because they're facing Green Bay, their price has been declined to 4,400, which is pretty cheap for a defense. And they're an elite defense. And Green Bay often looks like crap on the road, particularly against Denver. Denver got 15 on them last week. So I think this is a good spot to try to roll out. Maybe you're gambling against the Green Bay defense, against the Green Bay offense, but I actually like the Carolina defense in this game.
Do you think the Cam Newton thing, they're not rushing too much, do you think it has to do with the fact that they're undefeated and that they're trying to preserve him for the playoff run?
It could, but you would say the same thing about the fact that they're running Jonathan Stewart. I mean, somebody's always at risk, right?
Yeah.
And they're still running Jonathan Stewart. If they were trying to preserve their players, they would bring out RB3, whoever the hell that is, and give all of the play to him.
Artist Payne, man. Artist Payne.
Which they were using more at the start of the year than the end of the year. So they could be preserving Cam Newton, but I also think that when you give touchdowns to your running backs, you're sort of gaining their mad Cam steals their touchdowns is what I'm trying to say. And if you feed them, they might be a little bit more happy and willing to work for you the rest of the year.
Yep.
Interesting. So let's keep it moving. So this is my personal favorite because I'm a Pats fan, but it's the game I like. It's the game the public likes too. But it is Washington at New England, and the spread is -14. New England, with the over/under being 52.5. New England, even though they have spreads like -14, doesn't mean their over/under, like it just raises their over/under. So, like it seems like the Bengals are -11, but their over/under in the game is like 40. I'm basically saying that New England defense is not as great as their offense. So if the spread is higher, it just means their offense is going to do even better rather than their defense picking it up. I mean, let's start with New England. It's the common players, I think, the usual suspects, we'll say. So we'll go through those quickly and then focus on Washington players after that.
Yeah, so obviously you're going to be looking in cash at Gronk, Edelman, and Brady. Brady's at 9,500 at this point. Like, I think that might be the highest they actually go on FanDuel for a player in the NFL. But you are paying for the safety, and I know Nani and I were talking about this earlier. He asked me why don't people just play, Kirk Cousins? He gets 30 sometimes, and then play Phillip Rivers. He gets 30 sometimes. And the thing is that there are a lot of guys that do that. There are very few guys that do that consistently. So you're paying for the consistency, which I think in cash is what you actually want to do. Like that's how you win cash, is you pick players that have high floors. His floor seems like it's at about 26, 27 points. So even though it's 9,500, you're going to have to sacrifice in other positions. I think he might be worth the play because he's guaranteeing you somewhere around 26 points every single game. Just to gloss over some of these stats. Edelman, if you look at his stats, I'm not going to repeat them here, but they're ungodly. 20, 33, 20, 20, 33, 33. Like, insane stats. I'm not going to convince you not to play him. He's obviously a cash play. The Washington secondary is completely depleted. They're running. They used to be considered a good run-stopping defense. They're actually one of the worst in the league now. Over the last 3 weeks, they've given up a ton of rushing yards. I just think the Patriots are going to have a heyday, and whatever piece of that offense you can grab. I am sort of fading the Blount Dion Lewis thing just because it's hard to tell. What do you mean, thank you?
I'm so sick of this. Every week we always have to be like, oh, this is going to be a Dion Lewis game. This is going to be a LeGarrette Blount game.
The reason I know that they have a bad secondary and a bad rushing defense is because I tried to find out if it was a Blount game. And it just, they suck at stopping the run, they suck at stopping the pass, so it could be anybody.
It's such a waste of time. No one ever calls it correctly. Just forget about it, fade it all together.
Yeah, okay. Well, let's just say one of them could blow up the both tourney plays.
You can take a flip a
You
coin.
put your money on that. I'm not going to do it. The tourney play that I am looking at is Brandon LaFell. Over the last 2 weeks, he's accumulated 15 targets, 7 in one game, 8 in another game. And the Redskins secondary is one that is prone to giving up the deep play. And I feel like there's a potential here that Brandon LaFell could get a bomber and salvage his value. He's only 5,200, so maybe it's worth a flyer.
I agree. the max number of players you can play in one lineup is 4 players, right? 4
Yeah.
players from one team.
Uh-huh.
Oh, oh, just
Brady,
saying.
Edelman, Gronk, LaFell.
There you go.
Defense.
You win.
You take out LaFell and put in Gostowski.
Oh yeah, you could do that. It's a consideration. I think some sort of stack is not the worst idea.
I actually played in a 10-man league versus somebody who played every single Patriots weapon. He had Deion Lewis, Edelman, and Gronk. And he took second in the league with the rest of his lineup being absolute crap.
So
Perfect.
I think it's still worth it, especially in smaller platforms like leagues and stuff.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to Washington. We have some interesting thoughts.
Okay, Washington, I have for cash and tourney as Jordan Reed as a play. He's priced at 5,700. They're coming off a bye, and don't forget, Jordan Reed was the leading scoring tight end 2 weeks ago. But he is only priced at 5,700. Other tight ends are above him. That seems awfully weird to me, especially considering that he has a ton of targets. He caught 2 weeks ago. He caught 11 passes of the 13 targets he received for 2 touchdowns. Like, if that's the kind of upside that you can bring to the table, he's a good tourney play every week. But just because of the sheer amount of volume that he gets, makes him a good cash play for a tight end. Okay, that's a lot of play for a tight end. So I think he's a good cash play and tourney play, especially if you're thinking that they're going to be behind all game. You just plug him in and you'll be good to go.
You don't fear that he's going to be that one thing that the Patriots stop? Being that the volume is so high, he's sort of like the obvious guy.
He could be, but unless you're assuming that the score is going to be what's the over under 52.5, so it's going to be 53-0, then I'm okay like hoping that like if anyone's going to score, it's going to be Jordan Reed. At least that's what I would assume. In terms of fading, I am staying away from all the Washington running backs. Again, you don't know who it's going to be. You don't know if it's going to be Chris Thompson. You don't know if it's going to be Matt Jones. You don't know if it's going to be Alfred Morris. And these last couple of weeks, none of them has shown any upside at all. Like, we were so high on Matt Jones at the very beginning of the year, and then Alfred Morris has just been plodding along doing nothing really.
And then we actually had a Matt Jones game only.
Yeah, it's hard to call, and it's against, if you believe in the game script that Pats are going to be up by a lot, which you should be. It's not a good situation to go for the running back unless you're like, hey, Chris Thompson's back. I don't know his health status. Do you guys know that or no?
He's probably playing. He's questionable right now though.
Even then, so if he's questionable, you don't really use him. If he's not playing, Matt Jones might be a sneaky play if you really want the passing back in this blowout game. But again, I'm not a fan. I don't like playing those trash games. I will fade. Another one along the lines of trash play. A lot of people are saying that Kirk Cousins at 6,600 is a good play, just because the Pats defense is not particularly great, and if they say, oh, it's a trash game, you'll get a lot of trash points. Tyrod Taylor and Luck are the only quarterbacks to get 20 plus in trash time against the Pats. After that, people have been under 10. Like that's the floor. We saw it last week with Ryan Tannehill where he got 8 points against the Pats defense, and it's too much of a gamble. I'm not cool playing Kirk Cousins because he could get me less than that. I mean, I sort of see him and Tannehill are sort of comparable players with comparable So I mean, I'm not a fan of Kirk Cousins. I will fade him, and I hope you guys don't play him as well. An interesting stat that I found was that Kirk Cousins, his longest touchdown that he threw this season is 7 yards to Derek Carrier in Week 5. So, like, people aren't just catching long bombers from him into the end zone. They'll get down the field, and then he'll just throw a little dinky pass to someone in the red zone. That's
how they play, though.
Yeah, which is good territory for a tight end. So, I'm cool with Jordan Reed. Quarterback, not so much.
Okay, so I'm just going to ask a quick question, and it's that they came out and said that they're going to focus on the run game again, which is sort of what Dallas tries to do.
Yeah.
Slow the ball down, hold on to the ball forever. Does that scare you guys off at all of the Patriots players, or are you just going to roll them out anyway, knowing that Brady is just going to be slinging it, and it doesn't matter whether they get 5 possessions or 20 possessions?
Slinging. I'm not afraid.
You're not afraid?
Not afraid.
Yeah.
No, especially with the spread and the over-under. More reason to believe that they'll probably at least score a couple touchdowns, if not more than that, from the Pat side. So
Yeah, I can see them abandoning the run early and slinging it out.
Yep.
2.
45-14 is my guess score.
45-14. Yeah, and just to drive that point home, they played Dallas, and Dallas was not able to control the ball. So.
Yep.
All right, let's keep it moving. So next we have the revitalized Miami at Buffalo, who's been injury prone.
Revitalized and then
They just
died.
got bashed by the Patriots.
Revitalized. I mean, okay, so whenever I talk about teams and their
You just removed
status,
the Patriots.
yeah, I remove the Patriots game and think about everything else. Patriots are just on another level at this moment. So I still think Miami is revitalized. And they are playing at Buffalo. Buffalo -3. The over-under is 44. And I think this is going to be a fun game to watch. What do you guys think?
I think that they might be revitalized, but the loss of Cameron Wake might be too big to overcome. I think this game actually decides whether a team's out of the division for the playoff run or not.
Yeah.
And without Cameron Wake, and considering that the Bills are getting back Tyrod Taylor, they're getting back Carlos Williams, LaShawn McCoy is finally healthy, they're getting back, probably for a game, but Sammy Watkins is back. I think that the Bills win the game and probably make Miami look a little bit stupid, similar to the way that the Pats did. That being said, I think that Tyrod Taylor is a cash play. He was a cash play before he got hurt.
Yeah.
He's had a lot of weeks off, and he's only 7,200, so he's a steal. He'll be around 8,000 after a few games here. He already played Miami earlier in the year when they did have Cameron Wake, and he went for 277 yards and 3 touchdowns with no interceptions, and he didn't even rush much in that game. So I think there's a possibility that he, matches that production against a weaker defense. When he was healthy, his point totals were 15, 29, 24, 15, and 23, which is very serviceable for cash. So I think he's a good one. It is a little erratic, but he's serviceable, has nice upside around 25 to 28 points.
You know that. Oh,
go ahead.
So I have something about Tyrod Taylor real quick.
Sure, let's hear it.
He is ranked number 4 in fantasy points per game.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, number 4 QB. So, and very, very cheap in that range. So.
Yeah. And then for tourneys, I like LaShawn McCoy. The only reason I'm not all in on LaShawn McCoy is because 7,800 seems like a lot for him, given that he wasn't doing anything before this. So it's really hard for me to pay for him that price without a lot of proof that he's been good. He really hasn't had that amazing of a game just yet. So until he comes down a little bit, I'll probably avoid him in cash. You also have to consider that Carlos Williams, who had like a touchdown in every single game he played, is going to be vulturing those touchdowns from LaShawn McCoy. So Carlos Williams sort of limits LaShawn McCoy's upside. Miami also is 20th against opposing running backs, which is sort of middling. But lately they've been particularly bad against the running backs. So I think LaShawn McCoy does have the upside, but price and the backup make him a little bit scary to me. For fades, I'm fading Charles Clay, and I know this is going to kill Nani because this is a revenge game. Charles Clay used to play on Miami. He already had his game versus Miami where he went 5 for 82 and 1 touchdown. But Charles Clay, what we knew of him, is not the Charles Clay that we now have. His receptions over the last 7 are 4, 3, 5, 9, 1, 9, 3, meaning he's either getting play or he's not getting play. Add to that in this last game, some guy with the last name Grag showed up and was getting more targets than Charles Clay. He looked like an idiot. He was running out of bounds and catching the ball, like far out of bounds. He was standing with his teammates on the sidelines, and they were throwing him the ball, so he was out of bounds even though he had
The worst thing was that the dude was standing obviously out of bounds, and EJ Manuel had the balls to throw it to him. I was just like, Are you serious?
Well, he was wide open, bro. Clear path to the end zone if he was just, in bounds. So I'm not really trusting Charles Clay. There's a chance that because Tyrod Taylor's the quarterback, they bring back Charles Clay and sort of make him the feature. But this Grag out of nowhere makes me a little scared that they actually like the guy and are considering him, despite he had actually like 3 or 4 boneheaded plays in that game.
And he had a lot of red zone targets too,
he was getting a lot of red zone targets. Grag for tourney play.
No. I mean, I think Charles Clay. I agree with most of your points, but. You said that his receptions were 4, 3, 5, 9, 1, 9, 3. For a tight end, those are pretty respectable. I mean, the tight end's position is not a
But at
position where you can score a
5,700,
lot.
you
Is
can.
that any way like correlated to Tyrod Taylor playing or not?
No, EJ Manuel.
Because I know he was in and out.
EJ Manuel also threw to him nine times and then 3. So it's his point performances were a lot lower with EJ Manuel. He only got like 2 and like 1 point, but with Tyrod Taylor, he did it a lot better in terms of fantasy. Getting 6 was his lowest point total, non PPR. So I don't know. I agree with most of your points. I think maybe you take a wait and see approach. But me, it's a revenge script, and I can't pass that up. I think it's a good one. I'm a roll him out for Turney, not for cash. He's not safe, but Turney, I'm okay still playing him.
And he's truthful about this. He's playing him in our standard league.
Oh yeah.
The wide receivers for the Bills are a little banged up right now too, right? Like Watkins is a little hurt and Percy Hubbard's a little hurt.
Yeah.
So I like Charles Clay as a weapon, and I like LaShawn McCoy more because of this too. So I think for that reason, I like both those players a little more.
Yeah, another interesting guy is Robert Woods. While who was out? While Watkins was out, Robert Woods got a ton of love and got a touchdown.
He did.
Yeah, with Tyrod, right?
No. Well, no. It was with
Emmanuel.
It was with Emmanuel. EJ Manuel. Emmanuel. Wow. You got me saying Emmanuel now.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's interesting. It's going to be an interesting play. All right. So now we have the last 1 p.m. game on Sunday.
Wait. What about Miami?
Oh,
Miami
yeah.
games.
He hates Miami. He just
that's
wants to
why.
go past Miami.
It was.
Don't worry. I feel the same way. I don't have a lot of Miami players listed for cash or tourney. The only one I have written down for cash and tourney play is Jarvis Landry. Just because to me he's like a safe play. He's always going to be averaging 70 yards. He gets about 9 targets a game, and he catches about 6 targets a game. So I think he's like a safe play with a good floor. He's going to get about 7 points. He also leads his team in red zone targets, and he's 4th in the league in terms of red zone targets. So he's getting a ton of red zone targets, and it's only a matter of time until he starts converting them into good end zone goodness. So I like a lot of Jarvis Landry. Another player that I was wanting to list was Rashard Matthews. He is to me the poor man's Jarvis Landry, where they almost get the same amount of targets. I mean, a little less, right? He gets the same amount of yards, but a little less, and the same amount of touchdowns, but a little less. So I feel like he's a poor man's Jarvis Landry. But his price point was $6,500, and I was just like, if I'm debating between the two, I'm gonna pay the extra $500 and try to get the more volume and the higher chance of red zone from Jarvis Landry. So I have Jarvis Landry as the play over him, and I don't really want too much stock in this game where I play 2 Dolphins players, so I'm okay playing Jarvis Landry and cash and tourney. And that's the only notables that I had. Everyone else, I sort of want to see how they play out for now. I'm not too high on Lamar Miller. We've seen him have his up downs and down games, so I'm sort of like I'll wait and see how he goes. Same with Tannehill. Tannehill's forget it. I'm okay just waiting and seeing.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a divisional game, and Buffalo's playing at home. It makes it a little scary in terms of like fantasy point production and for all the players in this game. So that's why I'm especially fading Miami players.
I think one of the really scary things is that we saw Miami completely demolish 2 crappy teams and then completely get demolished by a good team.
Yeah.
And then they're facing the Bills, who are somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
We don't know if they're good. We don't know if they're bad. And, playing those players is risky. We don't know what we're going to get. And for me, I'm a homer. I believe in the Buffalo defense that's been getting shredded all year. I can't get off the Bills defense for some reason, and I think that I'm avoiding Miami players for that reason.
Yeah, I mean, like Miami, we talked about it last week. We were like, how are the Pats going to stop Miami? And they did that by stopping Lamar Miller. They limited him to under 50 yards, right? Like he had 30 yards, something like that. And I feel like Buffalo, seeing that, are going to do the same thing. They're going to limit Lamar Miller, try to keep him under. I mean, Buffalo running defense wise, they've only allowed 1 100-yard rusher so far, and that was last week or the 2 weeks before. Before that, they've never let anyone go above 100 yards. So I feel like they're a good rushing defense, they're respectable, and they will try their best to limit Lamar Miller. And then once that happens, then Ryan Tannehill will sort of collapse like he did last time, and you'll have that sort of repeat of last week. So I'm going to wait and see. I'm not going to totally fade, Tannehill and all them. But for now, I'll just wait.
All right. Okay, so let's now move on to the last game. So we have the Tennessee Titans at New Orleans, the red hot New Orleans, who had a slugfest with the Giants last week. Tennessee Titans are 1-6. They're looking pretty crappy. The over/under in the spread is not set yet. I think Vegas is also just confused about how to rate the New Orleans offense right now.
No, it's whether or not Mariota or Mettenberger plays.
That's true too.
That's the reason. If there's a quarterback not known, they usually don't set the line.
Interesting.
Who do you guys think it's going to be?
Mariota.
I say Mariota.
Yeah. I think this game is important to see who can make it in that division, right? That division sucks. We talked about this today.
Yeah, the New Orleans Falcons, Carolina's in that division, and Tampa Bay. But the bottom feeders are New Orleans and Tampa Bay. And
in the Tennessee.
Oh, in the Tennessee.
Yeah.
Oh, what are they?
Like Houston Texans.
They're 1-6. They're pretty much out. At 1-6,
their division sucks. It's like the Colts up top, and then everyone else is like
Colts, Texans, Jags, Titans. It's terrible. But I think at 1-6 with a new coach and they don't really have an offense.
Recover.
This game doesn't matter. We're counting them out. They're not in the running for the playoffs.
All right, let's start talking about the players for this game. We'll start with the Saints. So Evans, who do we like?
Yeah, so Mark Ingram last week didn't have a good week, despite the fact that they were able to score 52 points, which is a little bit disheartening. But what did happen in that game that we actually didn't talk about earlier in the injuries section was that Kyrie Robinson got hurt.
Oh, yeah,
and he's the second running back. But he's actually, if you watch the games, he's kind of better than Mark Ingram in most scenarios. And he's in a lot at the 1 yard line, 2 yard line type plays. So when he left for the season, that is a big boom to Mark Ingram's value because whatever touchdowns were getting vultured by him either now get vultured by Spiller or are given to Mark Ingram. And Spiller's never been a goal line type of guy. He's more of like an open space type of guy. So I think that we get to see a bump in Mark Ingram's production, and his price has gone down because of the last game not doing very much. So he actually went down $400 at $7,700. So for a guy who's already pretty consistently producing 15 points per game, now in a better situation for cheaper, I think he's a pretty good cash play. And then I also like Drew Brees. It seems like we've seen sort of a revitalization of him. Earlier in the year, he got hurt and wasn't throwing deep. We actually even saw some of the backup McCown. Is it Luke McCown? Yeah, Luke McCown. Mm-hmm. Came in. But since then, Drew Brees has sort of really picked up the passing. In this last game particularly, we saw him score 52 points. I think you were telling me a stat earlier, Nani, that he is one of the quarterbacks that most frequently gets to the 1, but then doesn't throw the touchdown. He runs to the touchdown. So his stats are actually deflated by the fact that they always get stopped on the 1. And if you take out those situations where they get stopped at the 1, he's actually got some really good stats. So I think that he's at home. He's in the dome. That's the thing we always say. The Titans don't have much of a pass rush, which means that Drew Brees is going to have all day. And he went from having no weapons, what we thought was just like a crappy set of weapons, to having a whole arsenal of weapons. And the Ben Watson, Ben Watson's good now. Snead is good now. Cooks is good now. He has Ingram. He has Spiller. And Colston also. Colston came out of nowhere in the last game and caught 2 touchdowns. So I think Drew Brees is definitely in the conversation for cash play. For tourney, I don't have anybody, and for fades, I actually put the whole wide receiver core. And I know that's probably going to be an unpopular thing to do because they did all do so well. But that's the thing, is that there are so many weapons to go to that it's like, well, how do I choose just one? I think this last game, I know, they broke records for most points in a game, or most touchdowns in a game.
Yeah.
This isn't going to happen again.
No.
And a lot of people are going to be playing a Breeze to one of these receivers stacks, which means that they're going to be high public, and if you can get off of that with someone else, then you're going to benefit probably more in a tourney than if you actually played them, even if they did well. So I think what's up?
So is that a bold prediction that Drew Brees won't reproduce the 7 touchdowns?
7 touchdowns. Is that bold? I don't know.
No, it's not a bold prediction.
There you go. I'm sorry.
Drew Brees is old, man. I can't even believe we saw what we saw. But my point is, in this game, what I see is, maybe Brees throws 2 touchdowns, and maybe one of them goes to Cooks and one of them goes to Snead.
Yeah.
That tends to be what happens. Or one goes to Watson and one goes to Snead, and then Colston's out in the cold winter, and you played him in your lineup and you look like a dummy. I think the safest plays are Breeze because he has the weapons and you don't have to select which guy, and Ingram, who's going to get a heavy dose of the workload.
Yeah, I'm a real big fan of Mark Ingram this week too. I think the script for Saints will sort of switch back to what they were trying to do all the previous games, where they're going to go back to the ground and pound. I think Mark Ingram will have a bounce back game. This is a good chance to sort of buy him in cash. I think he's a good tourney play too. I think you're telling me he's averaging 15 points per game. That's a good total to have, especially in tourney where last week all the running backs struggled. I think
that was a rarity, though. I think the running backs being also low total was just a random thing.
Yeah, it could be.
And he only got 11 last week.
Yeah, so I like him for cash and tourney this week. I also like I don't like Drew Brees too much. I think he's gonna turn into a chalk play this week just because we saw him go for historical stats. So a lot of people are gonna be really high on him. They're gonna be like, yeah, they're gonna do it again. They're at home. They're in a dome. They're gonna do it again. So I will also be sort of trying to fade away from playing Drew Brees and all the receivers cores along with him and just sort of bank on Mark Ingram.
So we talked about Mark Ingram, but and we said that Kyrie Robinson's out for the year, so his value goes up. But what about CJ Spiller?
For me, it's wait and see.
See.
Yeah, when he actually was playing when Curie went out, he did get a goal line carry. So there is still that fear that he ends up being the same type of guy that Curie was and snakes it. I think it's a wait and see, but because Ingram has been so steady, I think it's still okay to roll him out.
Yeah, he's just going to get a bump in value.
Yeah. Both are going to see a bump in value, but Spiller was literally at 0 before. So a bump from 0, I don't know. I'm not going to be too high on it until I see it.
Yep.
All right, so let's talk about Tennessee Titans. They have a coaching change, I believe, right?
Yeah, the coaching change. They got sick of him, gave him the boot. The offensive coordinator took over, and they're still screwed. So Kendall Wright was a receiver, and he's ailing right now. He's not healthy, and I think this is a scenario where they're gonna try to change. It's the same scenario as the Miami Dolphins, right? Where we fire the coach, we're gonna change, we're gonna try to win now. They're gonna bring back Mariota this week. And then who's he gonna throw to? To me, I have a cash play. I have as Delaney Walker. He's averaging 60 more targets per game, and without Kendall Wright, he should see a bump in targets, and they should rely on him more because the other receivers they have are just these rookies or these untrusted receivers in Justin Hunter and Dorial Green-Beckham. So it's. Those two receivers are way too gambly for me right now. I want to see how they perform. So right now, I think Delaney is a good safe cash play. In terms of tourney play, I think Marcus Mariota is a good play. He's priced at 7,100. In the beginning of the season, he started off pretty hot. He was able to get 20 or more points against Tampa Bay, Cleveland, and Indianapolis. Tampa Bay, Cleveland, Indianapolis. They're pretty bad passing defense teams. When he went up against Buffalo or Miami, he had around 10 points. So that's he's performing to the defense. If they're a good defense, he does good. If they're bad, he does bad. But this is against the Saints defense, who let Eli, don't forget about Eli, he was able to score 40 or more points last week. So this is a good spot for Marcus Mariota to at least score 20 or more. And I think he'll have a decent ceiling, and he's a good tourney play.
Yeah, what if Mettenberger plays, are you still playing Delaney Walker in cash?
Why do you do this?
Because it's not for sure that Mariota plays.
Yeah, I think even with Mettenberger playing, Delaney Walker is still seeing the same amount of targets. So
really?
I think he's still a safe play to put in cash. At 5,500 too, it's one of the cheaper tight ends to roll out. So if you're pressed for money, he's a good option there. Fading wise, I don't like any of the Tennessee running backs. I never have, and I never will, probably. It's Antonio Andrews, it's Bishop Sankey, and then Dexter McCluster. If you guys listened to our thing last week, I was not high on any of them, and if you didn't roll with any of them, you did well because Antonio Andrews only had 60 yards, right?
Hey, he had 40 receiving yards. He got me 12 points.
No thanks. And this week, David Cobb is supposedly coming back, and we don't know his role in this offense yet. He could be eating into his carries. He could take over. They're saying he's coming in overweight, so he might not even play. Again, that's just another running back to add to the equation. I'm not going to play with that. So I'm staying away from all the running backs in general again.
And before Andrew's 4-touchdown game.
That's
Good luck. Good luck with that. Are you guys rolling with them in tourney?
Hell no.
there's just so many better options. I don't know.
I did it last week because the coach had pretty much said that they were going to stick to the run game, and he got a ton of carries. And
Yeah.
he actually was part of the passing.
16 carries or
He was like a decent play, honestly.
Yeah,
So I don't
think
think he's.
so.
But this week we have a new coach. They're probably going to be behind. So, nah.
I mean,
DGB.
they're saying they're gonna try to run again. You know, like that's just what happens when you blow up a team and you blow up the coach. You know, you come in, you're like, we're focused on defense, we're focused on running. You know, and who knows?
It's just like Miami, guys. They revitalized the run.
So you're expecting
Lamar
2
Miller.
You
touchdowns?
can't revitalize if it
Lamar
was
Miller went off as soon as that coaching changed.
I have a
Right,
question.
but Lamar Miller has talent. None of those guys have talent.
So I have a question for you guys. I mentioned it earlier. So the receivers are Dorial Green Beckham and Justin Hunter. Who do you guys see? You know, sort of coming out on top with a scenario?
I would probably take Justin Hunter just because he's got a history there. The offensive coordinator knows him. They obviously weren't throwing to Dorial Green Beckham before, and if the offensive coordinator was making that decision before, he's the head coach now, so he's still there making decisions. I mean, with Kendall Wright, obviously someone else has to get the love, but I think that's probably Justin Hunter, if I had to guess.
I'll just take the opposite. DGB. Both of them get like 2 targets max a game so far. I see them just. I don't know. It's a toss up in the first place, but I think the coach did come out. The interim coach, the offensive coordinator, came out and said that Dorial Green Beckham will get more play. So I'm just gonna get.
They've said that like 3 different times.
They
I am gonna ride that and just say DGB.
So I'm on the Dorial Green Beckham, just because he's been limited in snaps, but he's still getting 5 red zone targets on the season. That's like tied for second on the team. And Justin Hunter only has 2 red zone targets. So I'm going off the pure fact that he has a higher chance to find the end zone. And so I'm happier to go in with Dorial Green Beckham. But who knows? It could
5
be the
and
other way
7
around.
games isn't that great.
It's not. But Justin Hunter only had 2, and he's been on the field more. So
Well, good luck getting in the red zone, bro.
DGB only has 2 touchdowns. Justin Hunter has
Probably has like 1.
yeah, 0.
0. Yeah, they don't throw to him in the end zone.
No,
what
they
I'm
don't.
banking on is yardage, and I don't think that they get in the end zone. I don't know.
I don't know. Neither of them are.
You're committing tournament suicide
Yeah.
if you play either
It
guy.
is.
dude,
This
like,
is a
It's
question.
not even worth talking about.
This is theoretical.
All right, so I think that concludes it for all the 1 p.m. games, and we'll do the analysis for the 4 p.m. and Monday game Friday. So, do you guys have anything else to add before we go away?
I do not.
You guys are silent, mutes. So let's do our plug. We'll plug in our Twitter, FantasyLabrats, at FantasyLabrats, and
Wow.
we also have a Gmail, FantasyLabrats@gmail.com. Our Twitter is it's booming. We'll say we like to be active on it, and we like to get questions and answer.
Our calls on Twitter on the day of the games have been insane. Just scroll through and look at the people who blew up that we've called. It's insane.
Yeah, so definitely
sharp.
check that out.
We're sure.
So we will sign off here and say hello sometime else. We good? All right. Peace.